Despacito, tu fuego despacito, deja que te diga cosas al oído, para que te acuerdes si no estás conmigo. Despacito, te besos despacito, me las paredes de tu laberinto, se ven por todo un manuscrito.
Now,
3, 2, 1, go.
Dissiparacitos.
Despacito. Let's get all the jokes out. Despacito.
Despacito,
This is
living
the-
alone in the apocalypse. Despacito in the apocalypse. Gotta
Try and
go
rhyme.
forage food from the hotel. Despacito, gonna go to the mining town. Maybe I have a theory that's why I survived, because I was underground when it happened. Despacito. That's the whole plot, by the way.
Nice.
That
That
was
is basically it. It's also
That was a good-
Desperacitos.
Yeah.
That was a good tune you got going.
Thank you.
The novelization of Despacito by H.G. Wells. Dropping a new book after a while.
I
But
know.
yeah. No, we joke around. We have fun.
We're just cracking. Yeah, not only do we crack spines, we crack jokes.
Your
Every-
choice, Paul.
You are cracking me up.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Yes. Hey,
It's Spine Crackers again.
here we are.
Hey, everybody.
My name is Gabe. Gabe. I'm not going to tell you my last name.
Gabe Key. Gabe Key.
Run through the alphabet and you'll find him. Because
You can find it. It's pretty. I bet you can find me pretty easy.
I'm out there.
My
I
name
use
is-
my first name for everything.
Yeah, I know. Your
know.
Twitter and everything.
You have no shame. You have no skeletons in your closet.
It's because you have nothing to lose. Like your job is just going to be automated in a couple of years anyway, and it doesn't matter.
Fuck
if,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Who they going to tell on you?
Yeah, who gonna tell? I'm fine.
Your mom. They're just going to tell your mom. Like Matt said a mean thing on the podcast. Your mom just cancels you.
Oh my god. My mom cancels me. She already canceled me because she was so excited about Kamala, and I was already like, I don't give a shit. And she was like, Matt. And I was canceled.
Matt, how
Yeah.
dare you? And I am Paul. I am Paul Chris. I am Paul.
Paul 3 names. You can just call him Paul 3 names.
Yeah,
Paul three names.
Polly 3 names.
Pauly 3
Yeah.
names.
And oddly enough, I only have 3 fingers also, which is weird.
It's crazy.
Yeah. What are the
weird.
odds?
Yeah.
What are we reading, Paul?
We're reading my pick. It's called Dissipatio H.G. The Vanishing by Guido Morselli. Guido.
by Juan Guaido.
Guido Morselli. He's an Italian author from like the 60s to 70s, I think, is when he wrote most of his work. All of his essays and novels were published after his death posthumously.
By suicide, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he committed suicide after writing this book. This is his last book, actually.
Death by self.
Yep. Self-inflicted murder.
He did blast his head, right? He blasted.
I don't actually know how he killed himself, but
right.
Is that what you read?
I think that's
Gun?
right.
Self-murder by gun.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I picked this book. Basically, it was like an off-the-shelf pick. That's how I would describe it. We have to pick our books ahead of time so we can read them on time and buy them on time. And I kind of panicked with this one, to be honest. It was like I was on the Kindle store, on the Kindle app, and I found it, and I was like, all right, it has 9 stars, and they're all or 9 reviews, and it's like a 5-bagger on Kindle. And
Cool.
I read like 2 pages and I was like, this sounds pretty good. And wow, only 9 reviews. It's pretty obscure. So I was like, that'll fit in with my 2 reader bros who love obscure fiction. Maybe they'll like it.
Bruh.
Maybe I will too.
Bro.
Bro, let me
That's
get
why-
that. Let me get that fucking obscure fiction, bro.
Although I'm curious now to know, because this is New York Review of Books again, right?
Yes.
Which I think I love them. I love New York Review of Books. And I
What do you
like
mean again? What have we read?
I'm wondering how much I'm just wondering how many, like, if there starts to like become a pattern of like, what ratios of imprints are we reading?
What else have we read that was this? That was New York Review of Books.
Gene Stafford, I think.
Yeah, but we didn't even record that. That was a long time ago.
Oh, maybe I'm throwing it back also to like just when we were talking without recording, but like
I'm trying to think.
Pre-pod.
it's not overwhelming. I just think the small majority here is New York Review of Books. I don't know.
If it is, what's your thought? Even if it was, like, I'm just curious about what made you think that, or why that popped into your head?
Just like in a pinch, it's an imprint that I trust. So I will be more comfortable like choosing like a New Directions paperback or like a New York Review of Books print, just if I'm like fuck and I need to grab something.
I think I think Matt, now that you mentioned it, I think Dirty Snow was a New York Review of Books edition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think that one might be out of print or going out, or I know some of the Simenon New York Review.
That one's out of print?
A lot of his are out of print that they released. Yeah. Penguin's doing all the my grade novels, and then a lot of his other stuff that New York Review of Books did is out of print now.
Damn. So
get that coffee.
So Matt, if it says New York Review of Books, you're just like, I live in New York City, I'm an intellectual, so I'm gonna buy this book. Is that what you're saying?
of course.
He doesn't live in New York City anymore.
No.
I stopped that.
Stop that.
I know they're kind of like a Criterion
like
collection, but whatever. I am kind of a sucker in the way you describe me as.
Yeah, I mean, if it was like the Baton Rouge like display of books, you'd be like, fuck that, I'm going to New York.
Whoa. Don't narrow me down like I have beef with Baton Rouge. The place I almost did a horrible gaffe, and I thought you meant Boca Raton, which I hate.
Whoa. Those are very different.
Way different.
No.
So what the hell is this book about, Paul? Or I think I don't have anything else to say about New Review of Books except they're pretty good. I don't know if they're like the Criterion collection. I guess they are.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how people feel about them. I like their covers, which is like a big Criterion kind of like accolade that they get, and I'm just like, ooh,
Yeah,
you're
right.
Yeah, I mean, one reason I picked this book is I thought it had a sweet cover. That was actually it's really similar to the Gene Stafford and the Simenon covers. So
I thought the cover was kind of whatever.
The void, the human silhouette void.
How is it similar to any of those covers?
Well, yeah, I don't know what you
similar
mean.
in like, isn't it just like a rectangle?
That's literally all of the New York Review of Books. That's just their graphic design.
Yeah, they have this.
I didn't know that. Well, you're talking like I should know that. I don't know. I mean, I'm on a book podcast, and I probably should know that, but I didn't know that.
That's like pretty much what they do. They just do the name and the thing in the square on whatever.
Yeah, they're like.
Well,
I think the branding is like that format, but then just like they usually choose some sort of like painting and just put it behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's still good. It's still good design either way.
Yeah,
it makes me think that this book is good.
I think
that's how they fucking get you.
I feel like this book
actually
kind of melds some other books that we liked. Like the topics kind of swirl around in this one a bit in this weird mixture. I think actually,
I have in a weird way a lot to say about this book.
Yeah,
I do too, even though I did not like it at all. but I have a lot to say.
Spoilers, bro.
Whoa, dude.
So Matt, what specifically do you mean?
Just like again, this is going to reference maybe like other stuff that we didn't record as a podcast per se, but like other books we've read. Like, you know, just there is the our sort of half joking Humisville again comparison. And
get ready for some heavy Humisville talk this episode.
And then there's a lot of like existential questions like that kind of, I don't know, kind of remind me a little bit of Dirty Snow, a lot of like the Box Man, you know. Yeah.
See, I would actually say that I would actually say that it could have done what Dirty Snow did or Moon Palace, but it like totally it took a different.
Okay. I feel like we're giving a little bit of a confusing thing. Like what is this book about? What's the premise of the book?
Okay.
What are some things that happen in it? Because I don't want people to think that we're talking about fucking Moon Palace box. Like it's not really like those in any way.
It's not a medley
in terms of what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, the basic plot outline is the main character, who is unnamed, finds himself coming to grips with the fact that everyone is on Earth has basically disappeared in the realm of like the leftovers, but instead of just like some people being left on Earth, it's just this guy, which he doesn't really come to grips or understand that completely until, I mean, he doesn't really totally understand that until towards the end. He keeps searching for people that could possibly be out there like him, but basically everyone just disappears on June 2nd, I think. And it takes place in some sort of alternate reality of like the 70s. It doesn't specifically say that, but in the foreword you learn that it was probably like around 1977 or something like that, I think. But you know, like there's like the main city that he tries to like explore for people is like the hub of the world at this point in this alternate reality. It's called like the Golden City. It's basically like the New York of Europe. It takes place in Europe for the most part.
Chrysopolis.
And it's Chrysopolis, and it's told in a basically like a journal-like way, I would say. It's not specifically like journal entries, but it's written in a way that is like someone writing a journal about their experience of being the last person left on Earth. And it basically goes through his initial experience of realizing that everyone is gone around him, and it goes through his like initial routine of trying to just like go out in the world and like find people, or just basically realizes that there's no one there, and he ends up calling a lot of places and no one's picking up. He calls people, you know, from different countries, from different continents, and no one's picking up. Sometimes an answering machine will pick up and they'll be like, oh my god, there's an actual person, and then it's just an answering machine. But the majority, I would say, of the book is a lot of flashbacks to his actual life when people were around, and kind of having like these philosophical arguments or discussions with himself and past characters. But I maybe a quarter of the book is like actual experiences that he's having in the moment, or actual experiences he's reminiscing about in terms of like past lovers or past like one of the other characters is a psychiatrist, and he ends up kind of like obsessing over him towards the end, but he has a few major flashbacks to him and debates with him about life and death and philosophical things, and that's basically it. I mean, he ends up going to a more remote little town in the mountains and exploring other areas of the country, trying to find people. And I would say that's the general basic outline of the plot.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
the only thing that I would add that I think is relevant is that the first one of the first flashbacks we get to sort of what he was doing kind of at the moment. He just calls it the event through the book. And we learn pretty early on that he was in a cave, like with the intention of killing himself. Like, and then he sort of decided not to for whatever reason, sort of like just getting distracted and then bored and then leaving. And when he comes out of the cave, everyone has disappeared from this reality.
But isn't this after an attempt to shoot himself prior to the events of June 2nd? That also is botched. That isn't that what leads him? Because chronology is a little, as you would guess, like it gets a little conflated as this man's kind of interiority just sort of calls the shots and you know, creates a strange sense of personal reality. So like, yeah, he tried to kill himself, which is how he met Kierpinski initially, right? And got committed.
Yep, I believe so.
Okay, just trying to get that straight.
I think it's, again, like you said, Matt, there's some and I would say one of the major kind of themes of the book is like time and our subjective experience of time, and kind of how, you know, what does it mean, like he sort of kind of lands on this view that like time is like basically social, and that like just when he was this sort of the only sentient, not the only sentient, there's still animals and things, but he's the only sort of human being that experiences
self-conscious.
Exactly. Yeah, self-conscious. Yeah. That experiences time in that way. Time kind of becomes not a thing anymore. And so there's definitely, I think that the temporality of some of the stuff is definitely hard to like pin down, because it's a mix of current things happening, flashbacks, and his own sort of creations in his head, and then dreams and stuff. So it's yeah, you're right, it's definitely a little slippery.
And it's funny because, like, you know, it's a guy who through the granting of a kind of almost a wish of his to be alone and to be like to be left alone and to not have to deal with the fucking like prying eyes and subjective thoughts of the other people in the world.
Yeah, I mean, he describes people as how he thinks of like rats and mosquitoes. Like, and I think that's a very probably very accurate view of how the author actually felt about people too. He was a very isolated individual.
Yeah. What he almost does though in this book is like start to reckon with some of the more specious reasons for why he might attach like intellectual and ideological and philosophical arguments for misanthropy, or like I don't know, eco-fascism is another thing that kind of comes into
view.
I
definitely want to talk about that at some point.
And I would say, you know, this book does a kind of at least a decent job of like having a person in conflict and like reckoning occasionally with the shortcomings of those, or again the super contextual relevance of some of those thoughts, and then being like, fuck, I only by this act do I see that I'm wrong, now that there's literally no one on earth, I'm the last man.
Yeah,
which is, you know, a kind of heavy-handed metaphor in its own right for a certain philosophical inquiry about the self.
Yeah, it's
very heavy-handed, very heavy-handed, very heavy.
But he says it's heavy-handed to himself.
Right. I also felt that's the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, is that I felt like the book, I mean, I think heavy-handed in some ways is right, but in other ways not. Like, there's definitely a lot of like, you know, name dropping and theory dropping and kind of like, but it's, I don't know, I feel like it's generally like done sort of tongue in cheek almost, and also kind of like, you know, it's also undermined in various ways by other things that happen either immediately or elsewhere in the book. Like I feel like the book is very like meta. It's very self-aware of itself, self-aware of itself. There it is.
Whoa.
Allow myself to introduce myself.
Squid pro quo.
But anyway, I feel like I found myself writing in the margins on a number of occasions like that there was, it's sort of meta commentary on what it's doing.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I would agree, but I just want to point out, I wrote down a few, maybe like half or a third of the name drops in my notes that always felt to just be like name drops for the sake of I know who these people are. And it was let me just name a few of them.
Let her rip.
Freud, Carl Jung, Marxism, various Latin texts in other languages besides Latin, everywhere. He drops Hegel, Descartes, Dostoevsky, Shakespeare, in a very just like, I thought,
Durkheim, a lot of Durkheim at the beginning.
Yeah, Emil Durkheim, Leibniz, fucking Herbert Marcuse.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the writer, reading about the writer, he's described as being just a very like avid reader of these sort of texts. Well, so it was influencing his writing style and his writing approach a lot. But I just,
well, Paul, did you read the intro or whatever? Like
No, I'm against. I read like half of it, and then I was like, I'm against forwards.
Well, I think that there was a little concession to your sense of frustration, which is like annoyingly over cultivated, was how he was described as a writer, or at least this particular protagonist.
What kind of a position is that? You're against forwards?
Well, in terms of the podcast, I want to read the text without reading a forward about what I'm reading about.
Yeah, like, you read it after. You go back and read it afterwards.
Yeah, but even I would rather read it after the podcast because I would
anxiety
like to have my
of
own
influence.
opinion. Yeah, I mean, if I was just reading a book by myself, I would read it after the book. But if I'm going on the podcast, I don't want to read it.
All right. Okay, fair enough.
Paul, I'm fucking feel you a little. I still read them, but like I worry that I'm dumb. I'm a dummy enough to like just be affected by the last strong opinion I heard and just be like, yeah, of course, fucking correct.
Yeah, like yeah, it makes me lazy to read them because I'll be like, oh, this is what that book's about, and I just don't want to be there. I'd rather stumble in the dark than just grasp onto something someone wrote in a forward.
So you guys are basically both Donald Trump, you're saying?
Whoa, bro!
Whoa, dude!
You come at our deplatformed king.
I just mean that exact what you said, Matt. That was something a lot of people said about Trump. He just believes the last opinion someone expressed strongly to him.
True, but that's true of a lot of people.
Yeah, no doubt.
I roll myself into that. Although I fight it, I try to.
Okay. Anyway, so we're talking. So it is noted in the introduction, right? That this main character is a little like, I don't know what the term is, but yeah,
he's overread almost, or
he's like,
yeah.
That's not a thing. I can't sign off on that with what we're doing.
Yeah. No one is ever overread.
No, come on. Come on now.
But yeah, I mean, like, definitely sort of, he's very concerned with trying to find, like, for whatever experience he's having or whatever thing he's doing at the time, he's very concerned with finding like the appropriate, like the most applicable theory or philosophical approach to whatever he's doing at any given moment. So, I'm rating this hotel for food. What's the utilitarian calculation of that? Whatever, like that, just that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He reminded me of the character from Good Will Hunting in the bar where Matt Damon is talking, like the blonde guy with long hair. And he's just like a douchey Harvard student. He reminded me of that guy. Like if that guy was the last person on Earth.
But if that guy was also like deep into self-inquiry to the point that he wanted to kill himself. which is what he is not is like the difference, I would say. Because like honestly, I think all the name drops work in a sense to like he's kind of deriding a lot of this stuff as being kind of useless in the face of like just grand mysteries or massive traumatic events.
Yeah, and I think part of the and we can talk about whether this point is in and of itself kind of pompous or whatever on Morselli's part, but I think part of the reason he writes this guy the way that he does is to sort of make the point that like when you're in a okay, I shouldn't say when you're in a situation like this because nobody is ever in a situation like this, but like that all of the sort of work and thought that people have put into science and philosophy and all that, like ultimately is sort of cosmically pointless, right? And then that when you find yourself in certain sorts of situations, it's not going to offer you any kind of comfort or aid.
Yeah, and I think that was my general standpoint by the end of it too, is that like all of this information he concocted and acquired over his life about various philosophies and all the readings he had done, he still found himself like kind of going mad towards the end. And he was like the only thing he really was left to do with himself was kind of sit and think about, you know, past debates, past philosophies he thought of, and it really got him nowhere in this situation. He ended up like towards the end discovering that he liked wearing women's clothing more than men's clothing, which I thought was hilarious and also very like, if no one's left on the earth, you probably would wear a dress because it's probably a lot more freeing to wear a dress. um, those are some of my favorite moments, probably.
I thought it was
ahead,
dotted with like creepy but like poignant moments. Like
Definitely.
when he starts putting mannequins around and weighing them in the pool to like pretend that he has like friends and like simulate.
Yeah.
Like that shit actually creeped me out. Like I remember being like, ugh, like maybe there could have been a couple more moments of that type of thing, but yeah, there were still some like pretty classic, just like dystopian sci-fi kind of moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought there were some really well written and, like you said, very, very eerie. And like a lot, like most of the book takes place, it seems like in the winter, like there's snow coming down or late winters or early spring. Maybe it seems like it's because, well, I guess, what is it? June 2nd, they all disappear. So I don't know. I guess they live up in the mountains and it's snowing. So, but there's some very like well-written atmospheric stuff describing him in the city and in the hotel and just kind of his fear and of the eeriness of it all.
Did anyone watch that Will Forte TV show, The Last Man on Earth? I have not, but
I saw like 4 episodes of the first season and I did not like it.
Okay, but not even touching on anything kind of like what's going on in here at all. Like,
well, that one that they pretty much immediately introduce other people that have survived in that show. So it's really not like it's really not The Last Man on Earth.
Well, okay, so I want to reel it back really quick because Paul, you coined the term soft fiction for this book, and it also applies to Hume'sville.
Yep.
And I knew that there was something out there that was kind of what you meant, and I found it. It's literally called philosophical fiction, and it's also I mean, like people like Reza Negarestani do like things called like theory fiction, but like philosophical fiction, or I think more commonly known as the novel of ideas, which just on Wikipedia is just refers to the class of works of fiction which devote a significant portion of their content to the sorts of questions normally addressed in philosophy. These might explore any facet of the human condition, including the function and role of a society, the nature of motivation of human acts, the purpose of life, ethics or morals, the role of art in human lives, the role of experience or reason in the development of knowledge, whether there exists free will, or any other topic of philosophical interest.
Okay, well, I agree that this book falls into that category, but I would say that Lathe of Heaven would be more of a philosophical fiction novel than this book.
It gets a shout out.
Does it?
Yep.
Yeah, in the foreword.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't read it.
And another book that we read.
No, I'm just saying you're dead on. It literally gets a shout out.
Well, I just to make my term, you know, give more like, you know, heat to it. I just think that soft fiction applies more to this book than it would be to Lathe of Heaven, because Lathe of Heaven still has like a very, like, it's still a plot to it. There's still a lot that happens within the novel that has these philosophical ideas mixed in, but I feel like this book had an emphasis on philosophical ideas, and the plot and what was actually happening was actually like a second thought. Most of the time when like these great, a lot of the descriptions I thought were really awesome when they came about, but they were so few and far between that I almost felt like the author was like, oh yeah, I'm writing a fiction novel. I should probably write more about what is actually happening to this character in the moment.
So like if the narrative is a spine, these are kind of invertebrate novels and therefore squishy and soft. Is that
sounds, I like that analogy.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I actually disagree that this book spent a lot of time on philosophy. It dropped some names and ideas, but it's not like there was like sustained inquiry into one thing at a time in the way that like some of the other stuff that we've been talking about like does.
What?
Yeah, I completely disagree with that analysis. I'm not saying that there's like a particularly strong narrative or like plot here either. There's not. But I think to me it was more about like what's sort of subjectively going on inside this person's head as they go through this fucking like impossibly bizarre experience.
I found it to be like floundering between a lot of different philosophical ideas. Like he was just
that's my point.
Yeah, and I think that why does that discount it from being a philosophical fiction or a soft fiction novel? Like,
well, I'm not saying
it was focused on those.
I actually think it is. I think soft fiction is fine, and I think this might fall into that. But I would certainly say it's not like theory fiction or anything like when I think about theory fiction or like something that's like more philosophical, it's like here's a point and I'm gonna like even in a roundabout sort of, you know, fiction driven way, like argue for a point, and I have like some specific, you know, like claim that I want to make and defend. And I don't think this book is really engaged in that. Like there's a few things that it brings up here and there, and some of them are like more or less consistent, but I don't think it's like I don't think there's any philosophical argumentation in the book.
Well, and that's why I discount it, and that's why I think, even though I hate Hume's Will, I give Hume's Will more props than this book, because I thought the author was kind of like regurgitating philosophical ideas that he has read in various books just to put them in the book to make himself sound smart.
I think you just hate philosophy. And I also the other thing I want to say, and then I'll let Matt. I know Matt has something on the tip of his tongue, but like
not much.
I guess I just sort of like, where is this like ascription of motive to the author coming from? Like who would he be trying to impress? And then he kills himself as soon as he finishes writing this. Like I feel like that's a kind of a sort of a bizarre way of like interpreting a text. Like he put these he referenced some philosophical theories to sound smart. Like to who?
To anyone. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to psychoanalyze him too much, but I thought he came across as kind of like a intellectual narcissist, someone who just like puts all their value on how much they know about various philosophical people and just like literary works and stuff. And I just found it pretty like pompous of him just to be
but I guess it feels like you're making the leap a little too quickly from a character that he's writing in the book to his own brain.
I found it to be very autobiographical, especially after reading about him. I thought, and you know, I did read a couple articles about the book. I didn't read the foreword, but I read a couple articles that said that it was kind of like an autobiographical character that he was writing about. So that's why I made the leap.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of a mixture of the two. Like, yeah, he was kind of like a failed literary personage who tried to live in the big city and ended up retreating and being a little bit of a, you know, kind of a misanthrope who became concerned with like population and the purity of the earth and this kind of stuff. But at the same time, I mean, you talk about narcissism, and I think this is a very, very much concerned with something incredibly similar, which is solipsism, which gets thrown around a bunch. The word, you know, which is definitely not painted in a positive light, and is something that he has to kind of like actually contend with. Again, he kind of like his very character is one who is, yeah, like throwing these ideas around. But I think the very fact that like they're the names and the little reference drops to like these eminent intellects are coming so fast and thick and not particularly coherently or burrowing into any one point for very long is a sign of him, his like kind of superficial use for them as like armor to a grander truth. And like that truth is largely this sort of armor against having to deal with some of the stuff that starts to emerge about how he feels about human beings, where he kind of grudgingly has to admit, you know, that he kind of wishes people were back. I will say I don't know exactly what the takeaway might be. It is a very depressing novel. Feels written by someone who put a gun into their mouth by the end of it.
Yeah, right.
It definitely does.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, I do think so. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the, like, I think one of the, you know, and you just mentioned it, Matt, one of the points, if there is one, I mean, I think part of what he's doing at these theories is like trying to find justifications for, like, you know, he goes through this sort of what I would consider to be like a natural process. Like, why am I the only person that's still here? Right. Like, he tries to like sort of use his powers of reason to like deduce why he's the only person that fucking survives. And he like sort of is like, okay, well, maybe it was because I was just in a cave and like something came and got everybody who was on the surface or in a house or whatever and left. And he was like, okay, so if I survived because I was in a cave, must have been other people in caves at the time, and so maybe they survived. And then he goes to this mining town sort of in, you know, ways away, and no one's there, and that kind of fails. And yeah, he kind of it's just sort of like slowly realizing that none of these, there's nothing that can help him kind of make sense of this event or his place in the world now. And I think if there's one kind of thread or point maybe that Morselli is trying to make, it may be the kind of eco-fascist point. So maybe we should talk about that a little bit, because I think that was something that came up definitely enough times for me to be like, it's a thing.
And also like the like you said, the kind of the feel that he's just kind of like bouncing around and like grasping at these people. I think there's like two kind of like main types of like people he's grabbing from that he kind of bounces between, which is like you know, these anthropological and scientific minds that he kind of uses to reference how he's inquiring about what the fuck happened for instance, being like, okay, like perhaps I was in a cave and the common instance is a cave and blah, blah, blah. And then also at the same time trying to wrestle with what if I am alone and I won't ever get the answer. And therefore the more like kind of, I would say metaphysical thinkers and how to like regard himself and his experience. And like that, those feel like the right. Is that kind of, I don't know if you guys got that vibe, but like those are the two people he's bouncing between.
Yeah. And then I also think there's the kind of like sort of recognition, and you sort of suggested this a little bit earlier, Matt, that like he actually is missing human contact. Like he sort of has some fondness for like his, I don't know if they were his like servants or whatever, the people he lived with that helped him, like, or were they just his neighbors? Okay, yeah. I guess for some reason I thought that they had like a professional relationship. And then of course Karpinski, right? His psychiatrist slash like friend in his mind sort of becomes this character that he's like constantly returning to in his head and like sort of longing for in a kind of like, spoiler alert, I would argue like in semi-sexual romantic way. Yeah.
It's like his one friend. It's like the one person he actually looks fondly back on, and he's kind of becomes a ghost that he tries to manifest through his memory.
Yep.
I didn't think of him as like a romantic longing. I thought he had enough like romantic longings with his ex Henrietta.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he looked at the psychiatrist more as like a intellectual equivalent that he was missing, like missing debate, missing some sort of argumentative relationship with somebody.
But of course,
someone
like,
who could help him out.
Yeah, and he has this dream, or he hears Karpinski's voice at one point saying, you know, come to this place and I'll be there and you can see me. And he goes and he's not there. And he kind of, that I think is where he sort of turns the corner into like really falling kind of mentally apart, right?
Yeah.
But it's Karpinski that he hears, not anybody else. And he's sort of chasing this memory and this concept of this person around, it seems like.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I was psychoanalyzing him a bit, and he seemed to be the type of person that like didn't really ever love anybody. Like he didn't really love his exes, even though he missed them. I think what he valued most about life was this like philosophical rhetoric that he liked engaging in, and that's why he was drawn to Karpinski.
Well, he's like the kind of misanthrope who's like almost succeeded in divorcing himself fully, and now has to like actually reckon with what that is. Like that feels like the kind of, you know, the what the like situation of the book is meant to really put to the test. And I think the autobiographical element of it is probably that Morselli, it seems, was kind of a mind of fucking hating people and kind of regarding civilization as innately corrupt, etc. But also having probably these foreboding feelings of like, you know, what the like, also like, I'm, you know, because if he's depressed and he kills himself, he's like, you know, the flip side is like, I'm a piece of shit. Like, what do I know? Could always be wrong, and I am wrong probably. And so like the book feels more like that. Like, I'm a misanthrope. I fucking hate people. I just want to be alone. And then like, do I actually think that? What would that look like?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's a sort of like extended thought experiment about like what, yeah, do I actually hate people? What would could I actually live this reality out if it's carried to its sort of like conclusion? So maybe that's like the main philosophical thrust of the book, is it's a thought experiment on that sort of question. Like, what does misanthropy actually look like in practice?
And then like all these people that he's throwing out, all these thinkers, it feels like someone throwing up, like someone who's like been poisoned by like years and years of their own attempts to rationalize or create some kind of argumentative like fortress to the notion that people are shit and that he doesn't need anybody. So it's like an emetic kind of almost vibe.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you put that. I just wanted to read a few because I actually feel like some of the best writing in the book is when he's describing sort of nature and like nature kind of returning and the earth sort of, you know, healing itself as it were in the sort of like eco-fash like lexicon. So this is on 39 in the physical copy, and then I want to read something on 44 or the next page also. So it says, without seeking it, I found proof that the event is not an illusion, not just my own invention. A family of chamois goats is walking along the tracks, 2 females, a male, and kids. They've come down from the mountains, something that's never happened before in human memory. For that matter, I've seen other good omens too. The birds are making an unholy racket and their numbers have grown, especially the nocturnal species that have come back in droves, which pleases me because I've always appreciated their musical talents. Owls of all kinds, wood, tawny, long-eared, little, their instincts tell them something they certainly never expected. The great enemy has withdrawn. The air is clear of smoke and fumes. The earth no longer stinks or quakes with terrible noises. Humans, you want to fight pollution? Simple, eliminate the polluting breed.
Yeah.
So it's pretty like, you know, and it's interesting because in those moments, it's like some of the like nicest writing that he does, like about nature and that, and then he just, you know, lands at this like hideous conclusion. That just,
yeah. It's just like the multicolored birds flourished and bred and sung their beautiful counter mezzo and mezzo songs into the grudges because of the fucking disgusting fucking dirt apes were finally fucking stomped out.
the skunk apes. Yeah. We're all just skunk apes.
Fucking big tumescent brain fucking just.
I do, but I mean, I do think, and this is like one of the difficulties with a lot of, because there are, you know, maybe I'm going to get accused of being eco-fash. I do get accused of that sometimes, but there are some interesting points, I think, in general, like made. It's I don't think it's just like sort of frothing, like, you know, population is out of control, like go extinct humans, even though there are some passages that are sort of more in that direction. But so this is just on the next page. The end of the world. One of the pranks played by anthropocentrism is to suggest that the end of our species will bring about the death of animal and vegetable nature, the end of the earth itself. The fall of the heavens. There is no eschatology that doesn't presume man's permanence is necessary to the permanence of everything else. It is accepted that things might have begun before us, unthinkable that they could ever end after us. And I think that's actually like a pretty salient point. And I think it's interesting that even in sort of contemporary discourse about climate change, though, and sort of, you know, human impacts on the environment, the way people talk about it is almost never in the language of the extinction of a species. It's in the language of the end of the world, which is, you know, ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it feels like didn't the Anthropocene era recently come back into favor almost?
Yeah,
like,
that's
like a term.
Yep, that's an academic discourse, I think, and that's been sort of gaining for a few years now. There was some scientific paper that used it, and then everyone in the humanities started using it, as often happens.
So yeah, another little like chunk on the 50 of the PDF is just at the very end is just, come on, you clever, presumptuous fellows, you make too much of yourselves. The world has never been so alive as it is since a certain breed of bipeds disappeared. It's never been so clean, so sparkling, so good-humored, which again is anthropomorphizing nature in ways too that is often other problem with like particularly eco-fash kind of people is like cleanliness and just like, you know, it's like a very weird view of nature as something that's like fucking so beautiful and harmonious and whatever as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's another point I can't find it at the moment where he refers to society as just a bad habit that humans have, which it's a funny turn of phrase, I thought.
Right, and then he like doesn't he like spin around and go like, but habits are all we have to like, you know what I mean? Like again,
yeah.
the book makes a point like that, and then I think it's important to note that like almost every time it does make a point like that, either immediately or next chapter or whatever, there's some sort of counter argument to kind of what he was saying before.
Yeah. And again, I think that and this gets back to sort of what I was saying earlier about these meta moments in the text where he's commenting on what he's doing as he's doing it. I mean, so on 63, this is right sort of at the beginning of chapter 11, where there's that triangle diagram. Matt, maybe that might help you find it in the
I've
PDF.
seen that before. I don't know what I've seen that before.
I mean, it's just two triangles on top of each other.
Well, don't make me sound like an idiot.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying it doesn't. I don't know. It didn't strike me as like super specific.
I think it was just like mortality or like bio.
Okay.
Whatever, a biomass on a timeline or something.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that makes sense because that's kind of what he's talking about there. But anyway, this is right above that. So he says. So Deucalion appears. Nothing illegitimate about that. I am the successor. Humanity was, now I am. Incarnation of the epilogue. Outcome of the generations. The purpose, the destination, the journey's end. Is there this is in parentheses. Is there a humorous aspect to what I'm saying? Up to a point. The humor's fitting, if not altogether sincere. It's undercut by pride and melancholy. And I'm like, you're just talking about the book you're writing also.
Yeah, I have another one, which is just sort of more of just like a distillation of the character, but just like, it just goes, what for anyone else would be an ocean of negativity and utter horror is something I'm able to float on in a paper boat, a boat made of a few mediocre, at times ironic, general ideas, which is kind of like his main fucking struggle.
Yes, absolutely.
/ saving grace. It's it's intentionally not that clear.
Yep. Just one more, just because I'm now trying to group together the places where I wrote that he's sort of engaging in this meta stuff. This is right at the beginning of chapter 8 on 41 in the physical copy. I think this relates to something that she says in the introduction, which is how about a lot of the sci-fi and speculative fiction of this sort of style and this era is like much more specifically engaged, like the Lathe of Heaven, like we were talking about, or some of the other things. Is much more sort of explicitly engaged in like social critique and like blah, 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 blah. So he says, this is just the beginning of chapter 8. I can think of numerous others of my professional tribe who, even supposing they were able to imagine my present situation, would say that it was unbelievable except as irony and farce, that it could only work as a medium for social satire.
Yeah, he's just talking about...
He's just talking about the writing of science fiction.
Right, yeah. It's funny because it seemed like like there was an indication... in some other thing, maybe it was again the fucking forward, who I read some other stuff too, but like that for whatever reason, since this is an Italian writer, like Italy didn't have a lot of apocalyptic fiction or the situation of an apocalypse was not something that the Italians in particular were doing a lot of in like the 70s, which is just funny because it's like business was booming for that shit in the US. So it's like that era is almost entirely in my mind associated with like that genre and the way that like the 80s would be for cyberpunk or something. Like it's I literally watched A Boy and His Dog like 2 days ago, like, so it's just funny that like he kind of maybe part of why the book didn't get picked up or anything is because the Italians were like, what is it? It's so crazy. This is so crazy. What are you doing? There's no one left. And it's like, because they never engaged with fucking apocalyptic. Sorry. But
with what?
With like the notion of an apocalypse, or like it was just not popular.
The closest the Italians ever got to an apocalyptic story was Stregonona.
Whatever, too much spaghetti and we all drowned in it.
Oh, spaghetti covered the earth.
Dude, I love that story.
And all the ocean turned to pasta sauce.
are you talking about? That's their utopia.
True. But as you know, utopia can too often switch over to dystopia.
Right, guys? Freaking Aldous Huxley.
Which is sort of what happens here. It like in the sense that like he's like, I'm a misanthrope. I get moved to the forest to get away from everybody. And then, like you said, Matt, it kind of becomes hell for him in a different way when he's confronted with the actual reality of it.
Which is funny because I think he's very aware of like the notion of hell as other people, and just doing an inversion. There's also the inversion of suicide itself, which is he tries to kill himself, and he just ends up eliminating the entire human population, and only himself survives.
Yep.
Which could be kind of like you mentioned, Paul, the leftovers. Which is like, kind of like the theory of that at the end. Spoilers, cover your ears, folks, if you haven't seen it. But I don't even know if this is true, right? But like that, like just there's two parallel realities that swapped populations. Who's to say that didn't happen?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and if you can uncover your ears now. That's also always a weird thing to say because like unless you give someone a visual cue, how are they going to know when to uncover them? Like for all they know, we could be talking about the leftovers for the next hour. But anyway.
Oh, good point. Very good point. Damn.
Anyway, if you haven't seen the leftovers, you should. I think in my opinion, it's the best. I think it's the best TV show of the last 20 years.
One of them for sure.
It's incredible.
My opinion is the same. I love that show. Great show.
Did you really hate this book that much?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I don't know. I found very little meaning, or I don't know. I just couldn't really connect with a lot of the ideas in it. So I don't know if they're by the wayside for me.
But again, like I don't know if it like. Again, if the meaning, I don't know. Like I don't know if there's really like I don't think there's a clean takeaway. I think it's just a guy having an overeducated guy having to reckon with finally like the ultimate the kind of ultimate realization of what he thought he wanted and believed.
Yeah, I think I get that's kind of what I was trying to get at earlier. Is I don't think of this as a book about ideas so much as a book about like getting what you want and realizing you don't want it.
Careful what you wish for. Right?
I think I was questioning, like, maybe this is a bad way to put it, but I was questioning
we were making really funny faces for all the audio listeners, which is everybody because this is a podcast. They were really funny though, I promise.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. Maybe this is a simp standpoint, but I was just like, out of all the people that could have survived and lived to be the last person on Earth, why was it fucking this guy? This guy sucks.
You gotta.
That's the whole point, though. That's his whole. That's what he doesn't understand that either.
Also, Paul, we gotta get simp straight with you.
Yeah. What? I don't. There's no way that's a simp. Do you know what simp means?
It's an acronym. Tell us what you think. No, tell us what you think first, because it could be funny.
I just think it means simple.
No, sir.
I don't give a shit. What does it mean?
What a simp. That was a very simp thing to say.
I live in the woods. I don't give a shit. What does it mean?
Well, everyone's
I'm a boomer. I'm a boomer. I don't
it means
care.
Someone idolizing mediocre pussy. It's when someone is too much of an OnlyFans contributor or that kind of bullshit.
You get banned on Twitch now for saying simp.
Yeah, simp is banned on Twitch. You can't say it.
Okay, well, I meant to say simpleton.
There you go.
Which is what it should be. I don't know. I don't know.
I didn't mean to rail what you thought.
I don't remember what I was trying to say. It doesn't matter.
I also think it's funny in thinking about, like, we can delve more into our own personal vibes in a minute if we want. But I think it's interesting, at least, to note that some of the like texts that he talks about don't don't exist. They are fake. They're you know the title of the book, Dissipatio H.G. is a reference to a Latin, I think it's Latin, I don't know, Latin text, Dissipatio Humano Generis or whatever, like which is supposedly written by Iamblichus, who was a real person, but this text is made up. Right, and so I think that it's interesting that he sort of sprinkles in made up texts and stuff with all of the real ones, which I don't know. I found that interesting, and specifically the title text being made up. I wonder if that is sort of relevant.
You know, I think on a basic level, it just makes him also just more of an unreliable narrator than you already probably presumed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just to keep you dizzy, you know, while you're reading.
I have a couple spicy takes.
Yeah.
Okay, my first spicy take is that he sort of invents, okay, I don't know how many people has been claimed that they invented social media, but certainly there's something no, I'm saying I just feel like that's something that everyone says about, like, that's like a classic spicy take about some old fucking person or something. Like they invented social media in the fucking 1500s.
Oh yeah,
you know, whatever. But I think that there's an interesting, like, so this is it's the beginning of chapter 12. For me, it's on 66, 67.
So I feel like I wrote a note that just said online, and I wonder if it's near where you are.
Okay, I would be really curious. So this is where he's sort of thinking, like, he's talking about his career as a journalist, because that's what he was.
Yep, it is exactly where I wrote this.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay. Okay, so he's talking about his career as a journalist, which is what he was before the thing, and he's going on these and this is interesting because he talks about a sort of zero population growth movement, and that he was invited to talk on the radio show for as well, which I'm basically just saying is like Joe Rogan's podcast.
Sure, yeah.
Or Alex Jones, maybe. But so he says, this is toward the bottom of the page.
Alex Jones would be deeply against that.
That's true. Yeah. I never had much luck in my few radio appearances. Recently, after I'd given up political journalism, I sat at a so-called roundtable where I was able to pose the following question. If the press aspires to represent public opinion as it claims to, why is it still monopolized by the journalist tribe? Not more than 150 people in this whole country, editors-in-chief and managing editors. Open up to the public. Professional journalists could be responsible for reporting the news and offering comments, and those two tasks would be plenty to justify their existence. The rest, the bulk of the paper, would collaborate with the users. Users, what a weird term to use in this era in this context. The rest, the bulk of the paper, would collaborate with the users, the readers, a joint participation that would certainly be unregulated, discordant, and partial, but still the only way to give voice to an authentic public opinion. I'm like, that is just the manifesto of like these social media companies and Reddit and like all of that, which I found to be fascinating.
Right. And it's funny to just know that leads to just like fucking clamp down and wishing for the opposite and claims of fake news. Yeah, I wrote the same thing. I just wrote like online.
Morselli was very online. He would have been on Parler, let's face it.
Parler. I hate that you just take it. I love that everyone just still cleaves to the like cliche of just like take a vowel out of a word and you got yourself an app name.
Well, Parler left the E in, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was Parler, like grinder. I thought it was
I think Parler. I'm pretty sure the E is actually there.
Oh damn! Well, it's the only place I can really go off. You know what I mean? So I'm I'm joking.
I'm just gonna yell, Sasha, Matt's on Parler.
He's on Parler. He's on. Sasha's on Parler.
It's a new dating app.
What would be worse if Matt was on Tumblr or Parler?
Anyone who's I don't want to offend anybody, but what is Tumblr even for at this anymore? Like,
there's a resurgence among the Gen Z.
I had a Tumblr.
It's coming
back in the day. My only.
Me too.
All I know about Tumblr now is that it's like, I don't know.
It took a gut punch with the porn thing, and I think it's just recovering.
Okay, that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
No, yeah. I mean, I had 10,000 followers on Tumblr back in the day.
I remember your Tumblr from then.
Unique users.
Yeah, unique. But I think now it went from like the porn thing to the not porn thing to Gen Zers trying to kind of coming back to it. I think it's semi-popular still.
If you're on Tumblr, you need to start shipping us and writing fan fictions about our relationships.
We should be having gay sex, we should have personas, we should be animals, we should have chibi anime avatars. I want it all.
I want it all.
All the pervert shit, just start doing it.
Yeah, honestly, that'd be sick. If people shipped us on Tumblr, that's like,
I want Paul to eat Gabe and there to be vor shit with him, be pregnant with Gabe.
If anyone wants to hear a steamy take right now, one time I was watching TV when in high school with Gabe and his brothers, and Gabe and everyone was laughing the whole movie, and I was like, "What is happening?" And it turned out that Gabe for about an hour was just holding his penis really close to my body, and I didn't know. And I finally realized that is true. You don't remember that?
No.
You're
accusing me of sexual assault on the podcast.
You were on the couch just holding your penis out. And everyone was laughing the whole time, and I was like, "This movie isn't that funny. Why is everyone laughing?"
There's no way I did it for an hour. There's no way. That's got to be an embellishment, at least.
I mean, yeah, okay. That's probably not true.
It's like Dr. Zhivago. It's like 3 hours long.
We were just watching Andy Warhol's Empire State Building movie. He's like 10
I think we were watching like Koyanis Katsi, actually.
That crosses the line into performance art itself.
True. Oh my God. Yeah, God. I don't remember that, and I apologize if that traumatized you or any of the listeners.
I mean, just to be honest, it was very traumatizing, but also very funny. So it's okay. They cancel each other out.
Well, this is the kind of thing you would be ruminating over if you were the last man on Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd be wandering like, the valleys of Vermont or something, just like being like, what did it mean? It was so close to me for an hour. What did it even mean?
You're right.
Well, okay. Speaking of, my other spicy take
it would never happen.
Well, you don't know. Maybe you will be the last man, and then you'll be glad you read this book.
Right. to know that it also was shitty for that other guy.
But speaking of shipping us in homoerotic relationships, my other spicy take, and this is very spicy, and I don't know how committed to it I am, but it did cross my mind when I was reading it a few different times, is that this book is also about being in the closet, because I think that the narrator certainly has develops some sort of strange pseudo-romantic attachment to Karpinski, or the idea of Karpinski in the story, especially towards the end. And then there's just a bunch of other little things, like Paul, you mentioned the bit about him kind of like realizing he likes to wear women's clothing, and like that probably had a whole nother valence in the early 70s in Italy.
That's true. Yeah.
And so I think that like I maybe have been, and I don't have like any like slam dunk textual support for this theory, but I just got the feeling when he's talking about Karpinski, especially towards the end, that it was developing into this sort of romantic relationship. And even in some of his memories that he describes, I was sort of like, it almost felt like they were sleeping together, or that Karpinski was going to confess his love to him at some point.
Yeah, to me, that makes the story more rich. It makes it more sad, even though I mean, if it was written today, I'd be like, who gives a fuck? Fuck whoever you want. But back then, if he was just like a closeted guy who was like struggling with his own sexuality, even as the author, maybe he was too, then that makes the whole thing a little more tragic for sure. But when I was reading it as someone in 2021, I was just like, all right, maybe I would try on women's clothing too. I don't give a fuck. So
yeah, that's why I think it
yeah,
might be relevant, like to think, like, yeah, when it was written, that might mean a very different thing or be taken a very different way.
Yeah, I think definitely, like, back, it was written in 1973. So,
and again,
in Italy,
yeah.
Italy, yeah, definitely. I think that he was probably struggling with something. Um, but you know, I'm reading it from my own point of view now, and I was just like, I just didn't even delve too deeply into it. Maybe I should have, but at that point, I was kind of checked out already.
So okay,
But,
let me do an experiment. Let me just read the ending of the book after having said this, and listen to it and think about it with that interpretation in mind. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the last sort of page roughly of the book, last half page. So spoilers. I have no hope. Great hope. Okay. Nonetheless, I've come to Chrysopolis to see him, my first conscious meeting with him, and I sense that I will see him real and present, upright in his white coat, bloodstains on the chest where they knifed him, arms open, but head lowered as when leaning against the window in my room, he would listen to me, his trousers rumpled beneath his doctor's coat. He won't speak. It will be pointless to ask him, as I once did in the clinic, are you still keeping me here? Haven't I recovered? He won't come to respond to my uncertainties or to announce anything. He'll be the modest, simple person of back then. He'll simply come to look for me, and he's already on his way. This is certainly not an expectation on my part, and it frees me from all impatience. So I sit here on a bench along the boulevard, looking at the life that's unfolding before my eyes in this strange eternity. The air shines with a dense humidity. Rainwater runs off in rivulets. The sewers in the old city must be blocked, that flow together onto the street and deposit day by day a thin layer of soil on the asphalt. It's not much more than a veil of earth, and yet something green is growing in it, not the usual city grass, but wild plants. The market of markets will one day be countryside with buttercups and chicory in flower. In my pocket, I'm keeping a pack of Gauloises for him, which that was his favorite cigarette brand. So that's how the book ends. And I think, like,
that's more compelling than anything.
It's pretty gay. Is that what you're trying to say? It's pretty gay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of, yeah. I think that's the sort of vibe I got, that there was some kind of, and I think if you think about the whole story of this person being like just desperately alone with no outlet, no way to make sense of anything, I think it's interesting to think of it as this sort of like, yeah.
Well, and also just pretty perfunctory relationships with women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doesn't really care too much.
Right.
I think there's a big old question mark over that. I don't know if I'm dedicated to that take either, but
no, it was just yeah.
But I mean, definitely, like, I mean, I think it's undeniable that there's like love for Karpinski.
Which I think there's a whole nother sort of question to be asked about, like the patient, yeah, exactly, patient psychiatrist relationship and the attachments that get formed there, which goes back to the Lathe of Heaven that we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, because he keeps saying, like,
I'm not even I was gonna say I'm not even that gay, but I mean, if I was the last man on Earth, I might think about Ryan Gosling in the same way.
Ryan.
Hello, Ryan.
Ryan.
You just carry what do you think Ryan got? What would you carry in your pocket for Ryan in case you ever met him after the world ended?
My copy of Blade Runner 2049 on Blu-ray.
Yeah, there you go. Blu-ray.
I want there to be a guy named Blu-ray.
You somehow have it on VHS to impress Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, it's retrofuturist.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think like, I don't know why I want to read this. This is, you kind of put a nice button on it, but just this little thing from 56. It's just, on the whole, the wish to materially possess a thing or a person conceals an intention to free oneself of them and move on to something else. What we have possessed, we can put behind us, put in the past, the already done. And like, that's in reference to Henrietta, or and these people, and like again, it took me a minute to even realize that Karpinski had been killed, which is
Stabbed.
I think what stabbed, yeah, which I think is what like allowed him to be the most living being in his memory. Weirdly enough, like the people that actually died are way more real than these people that, to quote the book, dissipated, and without any sort of causal, there's nothing you can do to like kind of deduce what that would be.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense to me, because it's like he's not even sure if these people died. Like a lot like the leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one's not even sure if they died or if they're in a different place or whatever. So like, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that's why he sort of at the beginning is so, is able to keep up with this quest that we sort of slowly realize is futile, to like, well, I don't know that they're dead. I just don't know that there's no one like around me right now. I mean, at one point he goes to see, I think it was like an ex-girlfriend, not Henrietta, someone else. And he's looking at her bed, sort of being like, she was here. There's the impression of her head on the pillow and the blankets are arranged in a certain way. And he just says, he says, this is not a deathbed. And sort of is talking about, the distinction between sort of unlife and death.
Exactly. Like, again, something that one has contended with, throughout all of humanity, and that there is a lot of, I think, significantly like literature on and just cultural ritual around and all this kind of stuff, versus the unexplainable, which is like the point,
Yep.
like kind of like the thing that you're supposed to do, which is like, how do you react in the face of an absolute mystery?
Yeah. I actually think that part too, I just found it is actually kind of creepy. And I'm just going to read this paragraph now because I like it and it's creepy.
Nice. Yeah.
So this woman's name is Tutti, that he was looking for, or going to her house. Now I climb the stairs slowly. I know she'll be there, slight, blonde, quiet as ever. I turn on the light at the doorway, and she is there, in some ways there, in the mark of her head on the pillow, and on the still-made bed, covers neatly tucked in, the slight weight of her body visible. I sit down near the bed, near my poor Tutti. The little woman, not my first love. I was already an expert in falling in love. Of my first climax, to whom I sacrificed aggressively my 15-year-old virginity. She, old and not beautiful in my eyes, was in love, although she was not more expert at it than I. My lust, without intimacy, the speed with which I was satisfied, wounded her deeply. This I knew. I was aware of it and pleased, and she, aware and not pleased to see me again. Me, so colorless, so changed, does not let herself be seen. This is not a deathbed. And soon I'll stretch out on it familiarly and will sleep a delicious long sleep, making up for that night wasted at the airport, foolishly waiting. Tutti isn't dead. So I just think that was an interesting sort of, that's kind of an early passage. So it's just him sort of trying to come to grips with like what this means. Yeah, and I think there's a lot there about like memory as well that's suggested.
And then like, I forget where it was, but just a notion of like, he just says radical pessimism is much like optimism, and there's this kind of sense of I don't know if this is horseshoe theory. I don't know what that is. You took the words
out of my mouth.
Fuck. Okay, so that's right. Like, yeah, like you just kind of like end up where you departed, but like with a kind of different spin on it, basically. Yeah, and that's kind of what it feels like. The closest you get to a bit of a closure here, right? Like, he's got this ghost in his head that he's gonna wait for as though they existed. He's kind of like come to terms with some of the like dumb, kind of stuff that he was just letting rattle around in his head, and he's losing certain delusions potentially about his situation.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Which is what you try and do personally anyway, even without the entire population disappearing.
Right.
Yeah.
So anything else?
Now I'm scrolling through, just looking at some of my highlights. I think There's nothing overly pressing.
So we've joked about it a few times, but I do want to say that this book to me felt basically like a sequel to Eumesville. I really do think that. Like that book is a similar sort of like theory fiction, whatever, like a lot of philosophical ideas bopping around, specifically about the individual and like subjectivity and the ego. And in that book, the main character, whose name I forget, he is named in that book, right?
Yeah, I'm also forgetting.
Yeah. Anyway, one of his fantasies or plans is to escape his life and run away and live alone in the forest, which is what this guy does. And then it sort of picks up after that. So this is Eumesville Part 2 and or Tombsville.
Although I will push back and say that, like, Gabe just wanted to say the pun, but
Tombsville.
Tombsville or Eumesville DLC. But like, I'm gonna push back just a bit, just because like I think this character is arriving at conclusions that I believe I'm pretty sure the character, the Anarch in Eumesville, has probably already more like rigorously arrived at. I'm just gonna say that. I think he's got a more fully formed notion of like the self, and like he wouldn't be as depressive and kind of volatile.
That's possible.
I think you're right. I think they have different temperaments. Once we get to the house sorting, we'll discover that for sure. Because the main character in Eumesville was definitely Slytherin, right?
Yeah. I forget what we came down.
I forget what we came. We should be recording this, but I guess we are recording it. But I mean, like, we don't know what we did for the earlier books.
I think he was a Slytherin.
Well, let's get into it then.
Yeah, let's do it for this one. Because get ready. Dun, 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 dun. You're a reader, Harry. I think I said that before, but
yeah, you think you did.
All right, that's the last time I get to do that. I gotta think of a new one.
I like it.
The segment is, we just did read another book, so you can't be mad, and we're about to sort them in the schools.
Harry Potter house sorting.
Okay.
So there's really like what, like 2 for this one? There's like 2.
This one's easy.
Yeah.
Because there's The Last Man on Earth.
Yeah.
And then there's his ideas.
Yeah, basically that's it. So what do we got? What house is he in? This last guy.
I think I have to go last because it's my pick. I go last.
Well,
right?
yeah. I don't know if we make that's the scores, but this one doesn't matter as much.
Fuck. I'm actually having a tough time.
Yeah, this is a weird one.
I think he's like straight up Ravenclaw.
I was gonna say Ravenclaw is my first instinct.
I think he's a strong Ravenclaw. I can't put him in any other house actually.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to go through, sort of doing like a process of elimination. Like he's definitely not a Hufflepuff, I don't think.
No,
I mean he's like smart, analytical. He took acid at one point, which is very Ravenclaw, I think.
Yeah,
it's very art school Ravenclaw. I think it's like I think he's a true Ravenclaw, last man on earth, Ravenclaw for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Ravenclaw.
A roving brain, essentially.
Mm-hmm. The brain not in a vat,
and not in a vat. The other classic like other. Yeah, you know what? I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So that's 3 Ravenclaws. That's pretty strong.
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Who? I
think the only other one we could possibly talk about is Karpinski, but it's all just descriptions of him from the main character, so it's like obviously tenuous.
Yeah. Especially when he was crazy.
I would say Karpinski's a Hufflepuff though. Because doesn't he like really help the main character? And okay, maybe Gryffindor.
I'm going
too.
Gryffindor.
All right. Well, okay. Why?
Well, he also first of all, he got in between a fight.
That's how he died
and was killed.
That's true.
Brave. Also, he seemed to be part of. It seems to be hinted at that he's like doesn't talk about, but is involved in other social causes.
like potentially like dissonant political groups. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, and it's just he seems very involved in a lot of things that require a bit of bravery and kind of putting yourself on the line.
Damn. Okay, sold. Gryffindor. That was a
I'm
strong case.
Yeah, Gryffindor.
Damn, double unanimous.
That's very. I wonder if that's ever happened. I mean, it's obviously it's more likely because there's only a couple characters,
but still, that was probably the smoothest it's ever gone.
Yeah. Okay, well, what did you guys think of this book? Like in terms of giving it a number score, which is the other thing we do at the end of every show.
Welcome.
Well, let me read my I wrote some notes when I finished the book. Let me just read them real quick.
Okay.
Fuck
because
notes, baby.
They were spur of the moment, and I just let me just read them. I wrote, in my terrible handwriting, I wrote, strength of fiction, dirty snow, moon palace, writing from the point of view of experience rather than writing in philosophical terms can evoke a different kind of emotional understanding that can be more powerful than baseline analytics and philosophy. Those are my final thoughts. And my general view is that like Dirty Snow brought up philosophical views and like social views within a story without having to resort to actually like pulling out name drops or just resorting to like I'm deciphering or depicting this moment with this philosophical moment that I read in this book. So I found it to be like a little anti-fiction. Like fiction should evoke those thoughts and those ideas within a story, and that's what I like about fiction. And I thought that this book was like pushing more of the philosophical tendencies and arguments over the story. So that lacks in what I think about fiction as a whole. I think that it should encompass you in a story and invoke ideas that are related to your environment and your society within a story. And I feel like this book was like kind of doing the opposite. It was trying to like
soft fiction.
It was soft fiction. It was trying to like hit you over the head with philosophical ideas while having a story in the background, which I just don't like when I'm reading a fiction book. So
Matt, what did you think?
I thought the book was like pretty good. I kind of get what you're saying, Paul. What I would have liked a bit, not that, you know, I don't know how helpful critiquing in this way is, but just like, if it could have been beefed up with a little more weaving of some of the personal life things that he brings up, just a little bit more of that to not necessarily create, again, a kind of biography from which I think the fear was that like too much biography lends itself to something he was overtly critical of in the text, which is psychoanalyzation. And like I get the impression that this person, like Morselli, was like, yeah, he was trying to be more of a brain about it and avoid almost like the author is dead, but the fictional character is dead. You know, which I guess is kind of true of theory fiction a lot of the time, or, you know, other things that whose concerns are more about just like, what would you, I'm having a tough time with this one, but it's kind of why I like it. It's kind of like I don't know, I'll give it a 3.67. I thought it did a good job at the very least of kind of like exemplifying a type of person who has over intellectualized their stance on the world and a viewpoint, and you kind of watch them flounder with that and have to learn the contradictions and weaknesses of their entire world system, kind of like in a speed run. And I think it shows that really well through, a fun conceit that predates The Leftovers and was unique, especially for, I guess, the time and the country.
Fun.
Yeah.
I would denounce the word fun there, but
I really feel like you hate the name drop, and I think I would say Morselli does too.
Yeah.
I would say that he's probably more on your side of things than you think.
Yep.
And your kind of distaste for that is
well. I mean,
wait. Okay, Paul. Hold on. You'll have your last
Okay.
say. It's your
well,
book.
I wanted to respond to what Matt just said real quick.
Yeah.
Because there was a line early on where he said that like he was quoting philosophy or something, and he just basically said that like in parentheses like I don't generally like philosophy. And do you remember that line? And I was like, what the fuck do you mean by that? Because this whole book is philosophy. And it goes back to your meta point, Gabe, of just like he was definitely thinking about that. But even if he was thinking about that, it's still within it, and I don't like it.
Oh, I thought of one more thing, because Paul, I won't say which one, but a Houellebecq book is on the horizon, folks, and get ready. But I've read that, the one we're about to read, and I like it. And there's a few others.
Why didn't you say? Okay,
don't worry about it.
Yeah, why didn't you say that?
I want to read it again. But like, there's some echoes of that, and I'm excited to see if you guys in the far future agree with me that that's true. But like, a kind of misanthrope character with concerns of societal and cultural degradation and stuff like that. I think that's very similar.
Yeah, that's a good. I think
and
that
very
will
like
relevant.
European. Like I feel like Italians and stuff, like the French, that they're like sitting in their touristified Rome, and they're just like, damn, what happened?
How did we get that? There goes the neighborhood, except it's on like a civilizational scale.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm excited to read that book. I don't want to talk about it much more, but
anyway, sorry. That's
no. Well, sports. Enticing the listener.
That was the first time we did that. That was the first time we teased our next book.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little beckoning hand.
Yeah. Well, it's not the next one. It's like it's actually in quite a few.
Yeah, it's a little.
But yeah, it's down the road. It's not. It's coming. It's in the pipeline, coming down the pike. Other metaphors, the phrases for things that are on the way.
Mm-hmm. But Paul, your score, please.
Wait, I didn't even go yet.
Oh, I thought. I'm so sorry.
Wow, no one cares.
I care. I care. I totally understood that you were next. I go last.
Anyway, I enjoyed it. I actually think, again, I'm just gonna say, kind of like I said at the beginning, I think you're kind of off base, Paul, about this being a philosophy heavy text. I think it's not. I think it's a character study of a guy who uses philosophy as a tool in this fucking crazy situation. But it's more scattershot and sort of it's a character study of a guy thinking through his situation more than anything else. And I thought it was good as that. I think the score I'm going to give it is a little bit higher than I want to, but it's because I went back and looked at my Hume'sville score and I liked this better than that book, and so I have to give it a higher score. Otherwise, I'm an inconsistent freak, and I deserve to be put to death. So
yeah, God forbid.
So I'm gonna give it I give Hume'sville a 3.7, and I'm gonna give this then a 3.81.
Oh shit!
Nice. And now you're consistent and you're flawless still.
Yes, flawless, baby. All right, Paul.
Well, get ready for basically a medium score drop, because I have to say that I respect Hume'sville more than this book. I think that whatever the fucking author's name is,
Ernst Junger.
Yeah. Junger. I think that he had a better grasp of what he was trying to do. So I have to give him a better score, or I have to give Hume'sville a better score than this book. I didn't enjoy reading it from probably like page 30 on. I hated it. I wanted to kill myself. I wanted to rip my eyeballs out of my head
Oh my god.
and shove them up my anus hole. And I think I gave Usual a 1.9, so I have to give this one a 1.87. I would recommend no one in my life to read this book. I thought it was boring as shit, and I picked it. It was my pick, and I hated it. But that's what you get from just an off the shelf pick. Sometimes you just like. I mean, I will say that it was like, even though I rip on Eamesville and a book like this a lot, like it's just not my cup of tea. I think that a lot of our listeners might actually really enjoy this book. I just it lacked a lot of the things that I like.
For you, it's more like a cup of pee.
Yeah, it's a cup.
Still hot,
it's a cup of elephant piss. I mean, it was hot elephant piss to me.
Well, no, I'd say cat piss is probably the worst type of piss.
Yeah, it smells so bad.
Yeah. If you were going to drink some.
Well,
I've never smelled like a lot of animal pee. So
you have a cat.
You have a lot of cats.
Yeah, but I haven't smelled. I just feel like elephant pee probably smells really bad.
That's probably
there's a lot of it. Yeah, you have to drink. You have to drink the amount of piss that an elephant has in one sitting, which is probably a lot.
That's true.
Yeah, so I would say that like Eamesville is drinking like an elephant piss like the whole thing, and this was like a hippopotamus.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Tight.
Well,
not everyone's consistent with it. Yeah. That's good.
Yep. That's a beautiful thing. And we'll be back again with another book next week, and after that for Into Eternity.
No doubt, dude. To our lovely listeners,
we love you. You're very special.
Yeah, and a storm is coming.
No, I'm not going out like that. I am not letting us go out like that.
Agents engage. I'm sorry.
I will say though, if you're one of our listeners and you were QAnon, you have my sympathies, because man, y'all whiffed big time.
Yeah.
You guys really fucking biffed it.
Yeah, you're Antifa now, baby.
That was a strike one and you're out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's like a permadeath game, you know? It's like
QAnon was basically just playing Darkest Dungeon for the last 4 years. And
God, fuck that game.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we love you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
And
so
we're
much.
in love with you.
And we're
your spine has been cracked. I love